From farmers to reverends and even a signer of the Declaration of Independence, the Huntington name has for over 250 years been a prominent surname. Today, the name is known across the country, from California to New York and even to the Carolinas. After our trip to Huntington Beach, South Carolina, led me to do some research, I found the Huntington story as interesting as this place is beautiful. In 1812, William and his wife Elizabeth Vincent Huntington welcomed their first son, Sloan, and by 1821, they welcomed their second son, Collis. At an early age, Sloan left his farming parents and 6 siblings to work in a silverware business. Eventually, Sloan established his own silverware business and by 1814 married Harriet Saunders, the daughter of a doctor. Together, Sloan and Harriet would have 6 children. By the time Sloan's brother Collis turned 16, he too left the Cincinnati farm. Collis only had $175 to his name, but headed for New York City anyway. While there, Collis became a peddler of watches until 1842, when he had enough money to partner with his older brother in a general merchandise business. By 1844, Collis married Elizabeth T. Stoddard. She came from a long line of reverends. In fact, her great-great-great-grandfather was Reverend Solomon Stoddard, a Puritan clergyman, religious leader, and author of the Halfway Covenant. During their marriage, while Collis and Elizabeth didn't have any children of their own, they did adopt Elizabeth's niece, Clara. During the gold rush, Collis ended up becoming wealthy overnight by heading to California to sell supplies to miners. After this success, he and his business partner Mark Hopkins became 2 of the Big Four who founded the Central Pacific Railroad Company, in charge of building the Transcontinental Railroad. Later, Collis also organized the Southern Pacific Railroad Company. After Collis became a master of the railroads, he set his eyes on Virginia and built the shipyard towns of Newport News and Huntington. When the Civil War broke out, both Sloan and Collis supported the North and its anti-slavery view. During the war, to support the cause, Sloan started a carriage-making business. And after the war, Collis collaborated with Booker T. Washington on black education projects. It was also after the war that Collis found himself in Richmond, Virginia at the Yarrington home. The home was ran by the widow, Miss Yarlington, whose husband had passed from consumption. While there, the 50-year-old Collis met the vivacious 18-year-old Arabella Yarrington, who was affectionately known as Belle. During my research, I found Belle described as the inspiration for Scarlett O'Hara's demeanor in Gone with the Wind. At any case, Belle and Collis became very close, regardless of Collis's status as a married man. I also read that Belle would accompany Collis on his business trips under the guise of his niece. Though no marriage records can be found, Belle later took the last name of the gambling house owner John Worsham. However, it is rumored that at this time, Belle was already pregnant with Collis's child. While this is not proven, Collis didn't help rumors much, as he gifted Belle a New York house during this time as a token of their friendship. After Belle and John's supposed marriage, Belle was taken far from the high society of New York and Richmond to Texas, where she stayed until she had her child. Regardless of the rumors, Belle presented her child as John's and gave him the name Archer, which was a Worsham family name. Meanwhile, in Collis's life, he had propositioned his brother Sloane's son, Henry, who was affectionately known as Eddie, with $10,000 to come and work for him. However, Eddie refused his uncle's money, stating that he would rather earn the money. After this, Collis became a mentor to Eddie and taught him the ins and outs of his business. Eventually, Eddie even marries Mary Alice, the daughter of Clara, Collis's adopted daughter. Together, Eddie and Mary Alice would go on to have 4 children. While I have found discrepancies, by 1878, Belle's husband John passed at either the age of 41 or 56. I have read that this was from cancer and that John was already very ill at the time of their supposed marriage. By 1883, with the death of Collis's financial advisor, it was discovered Collis had been bribing congressmen in order to get debt forgiveness and/or have debts lowered. This caused a scandal and public outrage, and as a result, many political cartoons about the situation began to circulate. In the same year, Collis's wife also became very ill. Some even say that Collis's dear friend Belle even nursed Elizabeth during her last days. By 1884, Belle and Collis found themselves free to marry, and they did so quickly. Following their marriage, Collis adopted Archer, and Belle sold the house Collis had gifted her to the Rockefellers. Collis and Belle then went on to have a wonderful time spending money. In fact, their lifestyle and Belle as a character is portrayed on the show The Gilded Age. During Belle's life, she was more than just a pretty face. She actually taught herself French and studied the French culture. In addition, she had a keen eye for art and interior design, and with Collis's help, became a woman of refined taste. Notably, you can still see some of the rooms she furnished in New York and California. During their life together, Collis and Belle also gave back by starting the Huntington University and an art museum. As far as Belle's son Archer, he had little interest in formal education, so Collis and Belle hired private tutors to teach him. Just as Belle was obsessed with the French culture, young Archer was very infatuated with the Arabic and Spanish cultures. He even learned to speak Arabic. In addition, Archer was very much like his parents, as he had a love for the arts. By 1900, Collis passed away, leaving 1/3 of his fortune to Archer, 1/3 to Eddie, and 1/3 to his wife Belle, which made her the richest woman in the world. After Collis's death, Belle only dressed in black. However, she was consoled by Eddie. In fact, Archer, Belle, and Eddie even went on a family trip to Spain together. Besides being a railroad tycoon, Eddie was a noted collector of art and rare books. In 1902, he purchased the property of more than 500 acres known as San Marino Ranch. By 1907, Eddie surprised the upper-class society by divorcing his wife, Mary Alice. Sadly, only 3 months after the divorce, Mary Alice became so ill from her cancer, she eventually passed away. Shortly after this, Eddie married Belle. By 1913, Eddie and his wife Belle helped with the incorporation of the city of San Marino. While Eddie was very well known for building and developing real estate, he did purchase the old Hotel Wentworth with 20 acres. Together, he and Belle remodeled it and opened it in 1914 as the Langham Huntington at Pasadena, a successful resort hotel. By 1920, Eddie turned his childhood home into the Huntington Memorial Library. Eddie and Belle went on to have a long life together. Prior to his death, Eddie began collecting portraits of well-known British subjects for the Huntington Gallery, and at one time had the largest collection of British portraits in the world. In 1924, Belle passed away, followed by Eddie in 1927. They were laid to rest beside each other in a grand mausoleum surrounded by orange groves. Today, because of Eddie, the Huntington Library contains 7 million manuscript items, over 400,000 rare books, over 1 million photographs and prints, and an original Gutenberg Bible. In addition, numerous streets, schools, buildings, and Huntington Beach in California were named in Eddie's honor. In regards to Archer, on August the 6th of 1895, he married the widow, Helen Manchester Gates, in London, England. Helen's first husband, Thomas, had been a member of the New York Cotton Exchange and sadly had passed away from tonsillitis. When Archer and Helen married, Helen already had a daughter named Mildred, who was only 4 years old. Notably, Archer and Helen had a lot in common, as she was an accomplished poet and fluent in Spanish. In addition, Archer and Helen were cousins, as her mother, the hymn writer Ellen Marie Huntington, happened to be Collis's youngest sister. While together, Archer founded the Hispanic Society of America in New York City. According to one Washington, D.C. paper in 1915, Harley and his wife, Leila McCartney, who had met Archer and Helen years before, were in New York City, where Harley was producing a series of plays. While there, Leila suffered a severe bout of bronchitis and was confined to a bed, unable to speak except in a hoarse whisper. When Helen visited her friend in her sickbed, Leila asked Helen to keep her husband entertained until she recovered. Helen happily complied. Several weeks later, Leila, sensing the developing romance between Harley and Helen, confronted her husband, who confirmed the truth. We can only imagine what the letter Leila sent to Helen said. Archer, having intercepted it and read it, handed it to Helen. Divorces were hastily but discreetly obtained. By 1921, Archer began correspondence with Anna Hyatt. Anna Hyatt was raised in a middle-class family. Her father was a professor of paleontology and zoology, who made many important scientific findings. Anna combined her love for animals with art and eventually became a reputable sculptor, who at one time was one of the highest paid women. Archer and Anna were married in her studio on March 10th, 1923, their double birthday. He was 44 and she was 47. After their marriage, Anna continued to live frugally and dress plainly. However, because money was no longer an issue, Anna began to donate many of her sculptures all over the world. Notably, she created and donated a sculpture to the Andrew Jackson State Park. Unfortunately, by 1927, Anna contracted tuberculosis. After seeking medical treatment, Archer decided to buy land in a warmer climate. Because of the Great Depression, the combined properties of Laurel Hill, Brook Green, Springfield, and the Oaks plantations, which were owned by the Brook Green Gun Club, came up for sale, and Archer purchased it in 1930. When they took over their South Carolina land, it had many homes, churches, cemeteries, and rice mills on the little over 6,000-acre property. Archer and Anna saw the value in the land as something that needed to be protected. The Huntingtons also recognized the significance of the marshland and eventually purchased more land on the adjacent Sandy Island. Archer and Anna, while together, gave many donations toward various arts, science, and humanities. In 1931, Archer and Anna opened the first sculpture garden in America, Brook Green Gardens, in order to collect, preserve, and exhibit sculptures and animals. While wealthy, Archer and Anna were not oblivious to the needs of the poor Carolina community. They saw that most people lived far below the poverty level. They also observed many people who still lived in former slave cabins. In order to help the community, instead of importing expert craftsmen, the Huntingtons set up a trade school which helped train locals in various skills. While the Huntingtons resided in a wooden structure, Archer hired these newly trained men to build Atalaya. The Atalaya Castle was designed by Archer and reflected his love for Moorish architecture. In fact, the large tower at Atalaya was constructed to conceal a water tower. In addition to hiring a local labor force to build Atalaya, Archer and Anna also established a medical clinic and had schools and churches repaired or built. The Huntingtons knew the importance of education and paid half of the annual salary for teachers and their assistants at the Laurel Hill and Sandy Island schools. They also funded college education for several of the residents. The Huntingtons also helped the community by improving sanitary conditions. This was done in part by their sponsorship of a welfare conference which promoted education and hosted speakers. Furthermore, the Huntingtons provided many of the impoverished people with clothing, shoes, holiday gifts, food and seeds, and even window screens. In order to feed people, the Huntingtons had the depleted fields amended so that locals could once again farm. They also allowed the locals to continue farming the rice fields at Brook Green, Spring Hill, and the Oaks plantations. Amazingly, this rice farming culture continued until World War II. During World War II, the Huntingtons vacated their home at Atalaya and provided it to the Army Air Corps, who used it from 1942 to 1946. At this time, Atalaya even had 3 machine guns mounted on it, and target practice took place on the beach. After Archer passed in 1955, by 1960, Anna Hyatt Huntington leased 2,500 acres of the property to the state of South Carolina. As a result, today you can not only visit Brook Green Gardens and see over 100 of Anna's sculptures, but you can visit the Huntington home at Elia. In the end, Archer and Anna Huntington also left a legacy of 14 museums, 4 wildlife preserves, and the 800-acre Collis Huntington State Park in Connecticut. However, no less important is the influence that Archer and Anna had in improving the lives of over 300 of their neighbors here in South Carolina. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please like it, and as always, thanks for watching.